Hi guys, welcome back to Sweet Sour Soccer and welcome back to another week of Premier League predictions. Of course, this week we've got mid-week Premier League games, and I've got to be honest, I've been having a look at these fixtures and we've got some good ones as well, haven't we? We've got some really close ones. When I was doing my predictions, actually, at one point I was just thinking this could be a draw, this could be a draw. Obviously, I haven't done that because that would just be a very boring Premier League predictions, but I think there's a lot of close games, so I'm looking forward to how this games week goes. Guys, if you are keeping up with the week-to-week Premier League predictions between me and James, I've finally won a week, but I've still got work to do. I'm 14 behind. Can I get that gap closed a bit more in this week? I will hope so. And of course, I'll drop James's predictions at the end of the video too, as always. So let's kick off the show with Wolves, who take on Burnley. And even as a Wolves fan, I can accept that this is probably the most boring game of this games week for the neutrals especially. It's going to be a cold one down good old Molineux on a Tuesday night. And this one, I think this could go either way, because what you've got is Wolves back to almost full strength. Of course, we'll still be missing the big loss of Pedro Neto, but we'll be able to bring back João Gomez and Mario Lemina, but the core of that midfield. But we're taking on a Burnley team who did get that win. Now, people will, if you are going to be critical, would say, well, that win was against Sheffield United, but nonetheless, 5-0, there's going to be a big confidence factor from that, won't there? And I think this could therefore cause a little bit of trouble for Wolves. Wolves also haven't done great against the lower league teams. Again, people would counteract that by saying, well, part of that might have been down to VAR. There's no might be, it is down to VAR. But nonetheless, look at how we've done against the lower teams. For me, I honestly think this one could be a draw, and I have gone for a draw. I've gone Wolves 1, Burnley 1. I'm just unfortunately not going into too much confidence as a Wolves fan. Let's move on to a game. I'm just going to be honest, it's going to be pretty difficult to say it's going to be a draw. I don't think this one's going to be a draw. It's Luton who take on Arsenal. I don't think I'm giving anything away there. Of course, I like Luton. I keep saying this. They're a team that put up a really good fight, but sadly, I think there is that lack of quality at times, and especially when you're taking on a big team like Arsenal as well. The one thing that they will have an advantage is the fact that it is at home. Is this going to be a moment where Luton can pull off one of their big shocks of the season? Perhaps, but they're taking on an Arsenal team for me that I think look really good, and they're playing really well at sometimes as well. That second goal against my team Wolves over the weekend was just a thing of beauty to even watch. And even as like the fan of the other supporting team, I just had to sit there and go, do you know what? Fair play. What a goal. And I think they will have too much, I think, for Luton. I'm going to go Luton 0, Arsenal 3 in this one. Let's move on to another game, which I'm not giving anything away by saying I don't think this one's going to be a draw either. It's Sheffield United who take on Liverpool, and it's a Sheffield United team that really are at rock bottom at the moment. You know, it'd be interesting to see if Paul Heckingbottom's still in the job by time the actual games comes to fruition. A lot of pressure is on him, and you can see why. Losing to Burnley 5-0. I mean, the question here is just how many, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, maybe Sheffield United being at home could give them some advantage, but Liverpool are going to have too much. I don't think I'm being harsh on Sheffield United for saying this. I just think they're going to have way too much. I've actually gone Sheffield United 0, Liverpool 6. I just think if they lost 5 to Burnley, they could get a real paste in here. Let's move on to Fulham next, who take on Forest. And this is a Forest manager in Steve Cooper, who's potentially under a bit of pressure. And again, half an eye is going to be on whether he's actually going to be in charge. I feel like Steve Cooper's still got a little bit of time, but pressure is mounting. Only one win in the last 10 games now. It feels like from the fan base as well, as much as I love Steve Cooper, it does feel that they feel he could be doing a lot more with this team. And of course, there is very good managers lurking, such as Lopetegui, who's sort of just lurking around England, waiting till a job comes up. And let's be honest, he's a very good manager. So it does feel like there's quite a lot of pressure on Forest. And of course, having lost our Nui, obviously their main striker, still, they've really struggled to replace him. Fulham, on the other hand, you know, they gave Liverpool a really good go, didn't they, in all fairness? I was very critical about them and their goal scoring, and they went and did that, what they did against Liverpool, and nearly managed to get some kind of result against them. I think because it is at Craven Cottage, I am going to give it to Fulham. I'm going to go Fulham 2, Nottingham Forest 1, and I do wonder if that could be the end for Steve Cooper if that did happen. Hi guys, just a quick one for me before we get back to the video. I've set as a target, can we get 5,500 subscribers before the end of the calendar year? I hope so, but to do that, we're going to need your help. So if you are new here, please do me a massive favour. If you can subscribe, it would mean a lot. And if you are already subscribed, hit that like button and leave a comment as well with your predictions too. And let's get back to these predictions. Let's move on next to Crystal Palace, who take on Bournemouth. And again, not an easy one to predict these predictions because Bournemouth really coming into some fine form, you know, another win at the weekend, and they really seem to have got their flow under the manager now, and the fans always stuck by him and saying, look, we're playing a lot better football. They're getting the points on the table now as well, and some of those summer signings that they made, which were injured or picked up injuries at the start of the season, have come back, and suddenly things are just looking a lot brighter for Bournemouth. I think, me included, a lot of fans wondered, have they got a bit of that second season syndrome? We see teams come up from the Championship, do well in the first season, but then really drop off in the second. I was one that was wondering about that, but I think they're looking fine now, and I don't expect, in all honesty, either of these teams to go down. But Palace have hit a bit of harder form, which really just surprised me, because you look at the team now, they've got Eze back, they've got Elise back. I thought, if anything, this Crystal Palace team would start to be cooking on gas, to be honest, but it's not quite come to fruition. But I do think they'll get a result. I'm going to go for a draw in this one. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Next, we have the Brighton Seagulls taking on the Brentford Bees. Do you know what? This is a really underrated game for the week. I don't feel like many people are going to be speaking about this game. I don't think there'll perhaps be some of the eyes on this game as perhaps some of the other bigger games, like you've got Man United, Chelsea, for instance. But this has a real potential to be an absolute cracker, I think. Brighton taking on Brentford, two teams that, you know, really can be very, very good at times and can have a real talent to attack, score some nice goals, and two teams that are showing other Premier League teams the right way to do it. We've seen Brighton, you know, obviously getting into the heights of Europe and what they've achieved, and Brentford as well, another team that go under the radar with another very good manager in Thomas Frank. And they don't spend an absolute fortune, but when they do buy, they've brought some really good players. I think these two teams are just going to have at it and go at each other. I hope so. Anyway, I'm not expecting a cagey game. I don't think it's in either of their natures, and I think that's going to lead to goals. Honestly, this one could go either way. I'm actually going to go for a draw again. I'm going to go for Brighton 2, Brentford 2 in this one. Let's move on to obviously the big game that I reckon people will have their eyes on. Obviously, it's not two teams at the height of the table, but it's two teams that have a lot of history of being at the height of the table. And, you know, both will be wanting to at least try and get back there. And it is Manchester United who take on Chelsea. And for United last game, it was another loss. It was another bad performance, and really another bad week, wasn't it? With everything that happened in the Champions League as well. Same can't be said for Chelsea. They're starting to find a little bit of momentum. They managed to get the win, even though it was a 10-man Chelsea team. Conor Gallagher obviously letting them down by getting sent off in some regards. And you do wonder, don't you? They've obviously got Nkunku, who to eventually come back. He looked very good in their pre-season. Looked like he would be a real game changer. Was really working well with Nicholas Jackson as well in pre-season. So when he does come back, you do wonder with this Chelsea team, we're going to start seeing what we should out of them. But of course, it's not a perfect team, and Manchester United will maybe fancy a go at them, but I don't think Man United fans will be confident at all about this game, and I really just think they're probably feeling quite disillusioned all about what's happening with United. It's really not a good show, and in all honesty, I think United will lose this game, even though it is at Old Trafford. I'm going to back Chelsea. I've got more of a good feeling about them. I'm going to go Chelsea. I'm going to go Man United 1, Chelsea 2. Let's move on to speak about Aston Villa now versus Man City, and where do we start with this? Let's start with Aston Villa, of course, because for me, you've got to look at their record at the Villa ground. I mean, because it's absolutely phenomenal. It really is. When Villa are at home, they do absolutely fantastic. We've seen how many games in a row that they've won at home, how many games they've been unbeaten at home. They're a real force, and this Manchester City team, obviously they ended up conceding 3, which was quite uncharacteristic against obviously what is a very good Tottenham team this season. But even so, it wasn't the full strength Spurs team, and you just wonder, Man City have already dropped quite a lot of points this season, haven't they? You do wonder if they're quite the same beast that won the treble, which is daft because they're pretty much the same team. But, I do feel like other teams can have a real good go at them this season. I do think Villa will, especially being at home. I'm going to go for a bit of a shock here. It's not a huge shock, but I'm going to give Villa a point. I'm going to go Aston Villa 1, Manchester City to drop points again 1. Let's move on to speaking about Everton, who take on Newcastle. And again, another game that I might have an eye to some potential for a bit of an upset. And I'll tell you why. In my opinion, Newcastle, absolutely fantastic team, taking nothing away from them. But they've had back-to-back Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. I think it's going to be Wednesday this game is played, games in the Premier League. And their team is razor thin. We've seen that, like, the starting 11 has been having to play all 90 minutes. We saw that in the Champions League, and they're coming into a really difficult stage of fixtures, aren't they, as well? And in terms of just the amount of fixtures that are coming up. And Everton just seem to have that bit of a bite about them. And when they got that points deduction, I was really wondering how would Everton respond? And I think they're responding really well. They've got that fight and they just want to get themselves out of that bottom 3 because they are a team that look very good this season, in all honesty. Deserve to obviously be in mid-table and would be if it wasn't for the points deduction. I just have a really funny feeling that there's going to be shock. I do. I'm going to call it, I'm going to go Everton 2, Newcastle United 1. That is going to be my prediction, guys. I'm set on that. We now move on to Spurs, who take on West Ham next. I think this is the last game. I was just checking it is. Difficult one to predict this again because obviously it is class. Well, not classed. It's a London derby. I don't know why I use the word class. It's a London derby. That might create a little bit of menace between the two teams. But Spurs look good against Manchester City, and I've not been really convinced with West Ham so much this season. Again, another manager that I want to keep my eye on to see if he'll last the season is David Moyes, because obviously he didn't have a fantastic season in the Premier League last one. It was almost the Europa Conference League that sort of saved him. I think Spurs will get the job done here. I do. I think it'll be a narrow win, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 win here. I think they've got Romero returning as well, if I'm not mistaken. Which will obviously be a big boost for Spurs. But I'm going to go to 1-0. Guys, I've put it up on screen this time round so we can quickly check out James's predictions as well. There's not really too much differential between ours. In general, he's gave Wolves a win. In other games, he's obviously given Fulham and Forest a draw. He's gave Bournemouth a win, whereas I've gone for a draw. There's no huge real shock differentials, but we have gone for quite different scores. So it does give me a chance to close that gap. Let me know in the comments whose predictions do you prefer as well? Who's going to get the most points this weekend? And guys, if you did join us earlier, we did a live on Sunday. If you're watching this not on Sunday, it was great to see you all in the chat again. And me and James, we're going to start doing more live shows. So if you are new to the channel as well, do make sure to check those out every week on Sunday. And hopefully I will see you on the next one. Take care, or hope you have a good start to the week as well. Take care. Goodbye.